We want a better understanding of what's happening in the world of AI so that we can use it to grow our business. So every week, we interview founders and leaders to learn about what they're building and what our future looks like. The founders come in all shapes and sizes, from just getting their first 100 customers to scaling 9-figure venture-backed companies. Welcome to All Things AI. Let's get started. David, co-founder of Openly. 10 years from now, what do you look back on as being meaningful?
I suppose I could give the typical answer of I enjoyed spending time with friends and family, not just dedicating all my hours to a laptop. But, the reality is I spend a lot of time learning new skills and trying to spend a bit of time getting the hang of AI, and hopefully that'll pay off. It's paying off so far in this small ways, but yeah, we'll see where that takes us.
Fantastic. And if you weren't living in Ireland, where would you live and why?
I think the US, just because it's a hub of innovation, there's a lot happening. And I also went over to Boston and New York in March of 2023, actually. And just the buzz, there's so much life and just the land of opportunities.
Yeah, fair enough. I appreciate that. I've lived there before. I'm living in Canada now, but I understand where that comes from. I feel like Americans bring a certain level of energy that a lot of countries just don't. And I definitely love that. What's your number? Everybody's got one. How much money is enough for you?
I don't 20 million is the number I have in my head. I think the reason is it'll allow me to buy a nice house. I'm into cars, so one or two nice cars, and then probably a few things for friends and family. Obviously, you have to do that, and then the rest probably will allow me to go into new ventures, tackle bigger problems that need more money that I can't do at the moment. I have a few ideas in my head. That's the number.
Yeah, sure. So about 800 grand on lifestyle stuff and then 19
Pump the rest
million.
into something else.
Yeah, got it. So let me give you a bit of who I think you are, a bit of an intro for you. You can absolutely correct the record. I'm going to say some stuff about you that is untrue. So you're currently running 2 startups. I believe you're seeing traction on both Openly AI and Accreditive. Openly is getting a huge amount of traction. It's a competitive analytics tool. And what it helps you do is basically monitor and learn from your competitors without spending all the time and attention that you would have to by pulling up their sites, looking through their stats, checking their testimonials, stuff like that. And Accreditive is an easy way to kind of cut through the noise and buy and sell treasury bills, kind of a hot topic now with interest rates being as high as they are. How do you typically introduce yourself?
I suppose I'm just finished a computer science degree. I'm hugely passionate about using software or tech in general to solve real world problems. I think one of my close friends, who's the co-founder of Openly, we both want to be described as operators. We're trying to ship fast, get things done, and solve real world problems. I don't know what kind of description that is, but that's that's what I'm going for.
And so are you actually the technical background on both of these startups then?
Yeah, so I'm technical. So for Openly, I got it off the ground, and about six to 8 weeks in, Kieran joined me, and he's got good experience in AWS and SST. So he's really good at the back end stuff. So he's joined and he's building it with me. But yeah, I am technical, just not to the level he is. He's brilliant.
And so are you actually the technical background on Tell both me of a bit these about that. startups then?
Yeah, so Openly.ai is a tool that makes it easier to do competitor analysis. So we want to be like a second brain for your startup or your business. We want to take the thinking and the time out of really getting the insights into your competitors. So whether users of your competitors are complaining about a certain feature, maybe it's a fintech startup and their open banking isn't working correctly, you'll be able to identify that quite early on as soon as someone posts about that. There's plenty of other examples, but we'll send you an email as soon as that happens and tell you what in your business needs to change to really target them users and potentially steal customers and get new business.
And so I guess walk me through, if I pop onto your website now, what does it look like? What do I need to get started, actually, is a better way to put this.
Yeah, so all you have to provide to us is the URL to your business and the URLs of your competitors, and we do the rest. We need to have access to publicly available data. We take that data, process it, and provide you with insights straight off the bat. As soon as you sign up, it takes a couple of minutes to process it, and then over time, if there's changes in the market, different trends that we see in the data, you'll get an email uh, to highlight that, or a notification if we do go into mobile or onto devices.
I sign up, I drop in my competitors' URLs, and I basically get updates when they change their pricing, probably updates about what they ran for Black Friday sales, looking at when they're adding new features to their feature stack.
I suppose down the line, it's certain kinds of businesses it works for really well at the moment, but we're not narrowing ourselves to them. So for SaaS, it works brilliantly, but for your everyday brick and mortar store who even have a website, it's not working the greatest. But we're focusing on the next couple of weeks on improving that, and then we're looking to expand into like reviews on Trustpilot, all of that, and also news. So it's kind of for bigger companies and product launches, stuff like that, that we're monitoring the news and giving you ideas about what you could do PR wise. There's a lot of things that come under this umbrella. We're just trying to do each individual thing quite well before we cover them all.
It's interesting that you mentioned the PR point too, because there's a whole ecosystem out there for products that just do like social monitoring, typically utilized by agencies to help them capture either attention or, land more PR for you. But really, when you think about your technical skill set, or what you actually need to provide really good information to get yourself ahead, all of that comes into the scope of like figuring out what your competitors are doing, when and why they're doing it, right? What actually attracted you to start working on this, specifically Openly?
Yeah, I suppose it first started, I was building another platform called Investly. It was a consumer fintech app. And I looked into, it was YouTube reviews specifically of my competitors. And in the comments, people were complaining about stuff. So I made a script that would grab that data and feed it into ChatGPT through their API. And it was providing fairly good results. And then I showed it off to a few connections at just a networking event. They asked would I build it for them and would that they would pay for it, which is always nice. And then I decided I'd just build the platform around that tool and launch it on Product Hunt. So it was free at that point, but the users weren't given feedback, stuff like that. So we decided to put payments on, and it's gone well since. So I think it's live for about 6 to 8 weeks with payments, and then a month on top of that was free.
And when do you turn the switch on from, oh, this was basically solving my own problem, to, oh, people are trying to buy this from me? Like,
Yeah.
when does that change?
I don't know. Like this was a side project that was built in a weekend, and I kind of forgot about it, and then was just chatting to these people, and they were like, "This is cool. This is useful," and they were like, "Well, we're willing to pay for it." And then I was building it out for them, and then I was like, "Hold on a second. This is easy to duplicate, so we can just put authentication, log in with Google around it," and it kind of went from there. I didn't even think about it at the time, but yeah, looking back, it was probably a week or two into the project. It was just that was a side project, and it turned into this.
Sometimes people step really strongly forward into things that are meaningful, but sometimes you just back into them, right?
Yeah. Like previously, I was trying to build out Investly, which is a slow process, really regulated space, trying to follow the norm or the things you're meant to do, building a business that you're encouraged to do, seek funding, all that, pitch decks and all. I haven't done a pitch deck for Openly yet, and we're getting offers from VCs and stuff. So yeah, it's a different. I didn't think it would turn into a business, but it has. It's good.
And what was Investly?
It was like consumer spending. So it was actually a similar theory. Take in data, build models around it, and tell you what you're doing right and wrong with your spending. So we had people on the platform and using it, but we couldn't go public. It was using open banking. We couldn't take it public until we got the licenses that we needed, and it was going to be 60 to £100,000, and that was too much. We weren't generating revenue. We didn't have enough data. So yeah, that like I'd like to. That's one of the projects. If I made a bit of money, I would probably chase.
It's interesting that you basically made a full pivot into using the same tech for solving a different problem
Yeah, it's
effectively.
yeah, exactly. We've like it's now gotten a bit more complicated, but the first project or the side project was just similar concept, and it's good timing that the GPT models had come out, so we could plug our generic data that we'd scraped into them, and it did what it was meant to do. So a
Hmm.
year ago we couldn't have built this.
Is competitive analysis something that you deeply care about, or is it just really interesting to be able to use data attached to an LLM to basically make decisions? How do you think about that?
Building my last project, it was purely fixing all the issues of the competitors. So I did deeply care about it, and now I'm just fascinated with what data we can get access to and how we interpret that data, how that helps a business. And because it's not specific, the big challenge is how do we build a generic tool that works for all these companies. It is fascinating how I don't have the answers, but trying to find the answers just it's uh it's good fun. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
So you said that basically a year ago this was impossible to do without access to LLMs. How do you guys actually use LLMs? Is it data processing, analysis, end to end? Where does this kind of live in your product?
So it's towards the tail end of the pipeline. So what we've done is scrape the data from various websites. There's a few. It's a combination of Hugging Face and small stuff we've built in house. And then at the end of the pipeline, we've got a data set. It depends on what, if we're grabbing features or we're grabbing pricing. But that then gets we've more or less narrowed everything down, and then plug in some insights on the competitors and the company itself into GPT-4 Turbo now. We've tuned some of them. We tuned a GPT 3.5 model to do that, and it was working well. And then we just moved to the default GPT-4. So we plug all that data that we've scraped and gathered into the model, and it provides insights. And they're
Yeah.
80 or 90% of them are actually reasonably useful. Some are brilliant that you wouldn't have thought of. So it's quite cool that it's doing it from straight out of the box.
Yeah, no kidding. Did you guys see, like, after fine tuning a 3.5 model for a while and then going to 4.5, 4.0 turbo,
Yeah,
the new version
yeah.
that came out, did you guys see like a fall off in the insights going from a fine tuned to a generic, or did you see an increase right off the bat? Where was the
No,
change there?
we saw there wasn't much of a change. What it did better, because we tuned it to certain websites, we knew our users, we'd nearly overfitted to our users and their competitors and our own competitors. So if a new user came on board, the insights we were giving them weren't that good. But when we moved to GPT-4 and GPT-4 Turbo, it was good for all websites. Well, not all, but a lot of them. So yeah, it was just better at the generic stuff.
So early on, without training, or with less training, less
Yeah,
data, it was getting
yeah.
things right faster. Tell me about your traction so far. So it sounds like you guys scaled up from being an off project on the weekend to selling it in the first few weeks to, I think you're somewhere around 2,000 users now. Tell me about your traction.
I don't know how many signed up the first couple of weeks. Our analytics just wasn't working great, but it kind of went up in a peak. We've had two peaks, and now we've flattened out the last week or two. But it's been, I think we're up to 2,004 or 500 users now since we last spoke. So it's growing rapidly. I'd say we've a good chunk of them are paying, and we're just trying to convert more. A lot of the users signed up for free, so trying to provide real value to get them converted over. We did launch on obviously Product Hunt, got a good bit of traction. We launched with yourselves, and there was a couple of other tools that we're getting a good bit of traffic from. But to grow long term, we want to be ranking in SEO. We're going to trial a few things. I actually read a book called Traction. It's quite good. So we're going to look at a few techniques from that and really test them out. Now that revenue's coming in, we can afford to do a bit of trial and error and figure out how we're going to acquire customers.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Traction is Russell Brunson.
I think so.
One of my friends just ordered a book like that for me. I think it was the new Russell Brunson book.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. It's really good. I've just read it, so highly recommend it.
Later on, I'm happy to talk about SEO. All of our traffic comes from SEO for the most part, if not more than 99%. Now we've spent, frankly, months learning about how to trying to optimize it, both at micro level with like what single pages that ranks, and at a macro level with like programmatic pages at scale type of thing. So you talked a little bit about this product working well for SaaS. Who are the typical audience that come to buy it?
We're still trying to figure that out, but it seems like it's marketers. The actual individuals in the companies are marketers, executives, and anyone in business intelligence. So they're the people, but the companies they're coming from are mostly mid to late stage. We thought we'd get more startups, but what we can see is that the insights are inaccurate because their business is changing so quickly, like even down to weeks. These guys are so early that our insights are just all over the shop for them because their business isn't consistent over a long period of time. I don't know how we improve that. We're going to try and figure that out, but it seems to be bigger businesses will be targeting. And then going down the enterprise route long term, but the sales cycle and it's quite long, and it's high touch. There's a lot of work involved in getting enterprise clients over the line.
And how do you think about like other industries outside of tech then?
The one, obviously, there's a lot of our own competitors are in e-commerce. If we tailored our scraping models to go through thousands of products and to catalog that data, that would be quite useful. There are tools doing that, but they're quite manual. Like you still have to go in and see what's changed. They're decent, but we could go into that market. But we're constantly experimenting and trying things out, so it's something I'm open to.
One of the reasons why I was thinking about this is because I feel like e-commerce companies tend to be very price and feature sensitive when it comes to selling like mass market products, consumer electronics, that type of thing. And maybe tech is like that as well. And I'm just a little bit more numb to it. But it seems like that 20% saving on a product is more important to an e-commerce company than it is to a tech company. And it's mostly because of the scale at which they sell at. Now, I don't know if that's true. All of that is speculation, but that's why I was thinking about this.
And another thing, it's for that, especially for e-commerce, like say on Amazon coming up to Black Friday and you see the 20-25% discount on the TV, there is an app you can go back through the past and see that they've actually hiked the price so they can drop it and they're still making, obviously making money. But that was a B2B tool. Consumers don't know that, or use that tool from what I can see. So there's probably room for a direct to consumer application that they could put in the link of something and go through time. Like even for car dealerships, there's plenty of ideas under that umbrella. It's not just e-commerce. Yeah, there's a few different ideas in there.
Yeah, 100%. Speaking as somebody who is very cheap, I watch URLs all the time and do my own monitoring reporting, even if I'm buying like, I don't know, a few $100 coffee maker or something.
Yeah.
it'll take me months to pull the trigger just because I'm once a week checking what is it on Amazon, what is it at Target or whatever.
Yeah. Well, we can build a tool for you. It'll just cost you.
Fantastic. What does the next few months look like for you guys in terms of your roadmap?
We're obviously planning to iterate the product. We're focused on getting more users to iterate the product. So we had a big launch there, big update a couple of weeks ago, but because the growth has plateaued, we can't get the data, like enough data to decide what we're going to change, what we're going to do next. So for the next month anyways, we're planning just to grow. We're aiming to get up to 5,000 users in the coming weeks. It's probably going to take a bit longer than a few weeks, but that's the plan. And then the more long-term growth strategies or marketing strategies such as blogs, content, SEO. We're starting to figure that out. I don't know how much is involved, but yeah, investing in the long term. We don't even know exactly what we're going to do, so it's kind of hard to answer that question. We're figuring it out day to day.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And are you guys raising money?
It's something we have thought about. At the moment, no, because we're covering our costs and we're just trying to grow. We're obviously trying to figure out product market fit. But when we're looking to scale and get out there to thousands and thousands of users, we obviously will consider that. We probably will have to at some point.
So probably not thinking about it right now.
Yeah, yeah. But if there's any VCs listening, I would love to have a chat.
That's fantastic. We've talked a lot about Openly. We haven't talked anything about the other company, Active. I said that wrong. Creditive.
Maybe we have picked an awkward name.
I think we talked about naming companies before, and that I think I suck at naming companies or just naming anything, frankly.
It's a challenge. Like for that space, we wanted to pick something that had meaning but wasn't a real word, because I'd experienced naming Investly, which doesn't make sense for a consumer spending app because you think investing. So I was like, we need something that has meaning but it's not too specific. And then all the names we did come up with were taken. So we've named Accretive after accretion. So
Okay.
Constantly improving over time. That is the meaning, but we'll see how people take it.
Getting something simple enough with a domain name that's available, in my preference, is like it's .com or nothing for me, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I'm extremely limited to what I choose. Spending time on running two companies, how do you think about, where you spend your time?
Yeah, so Openly at the moment is throwing the most challenges. It's generating revenue. Like it's progressing and with users to keep happy. So it's taken up a lot of the time. And Accretive is more long term. It's a bigger picture project. So things seem to they're a lot longer, especially in a regulated space. Similar to Investly, we have to get licenses. We have to raise money straight up for that. But my co-founder is from that space, so that makes things easier for me. So I'm just developing. So a lot of the things I learned tech-wise from Openly is transferable to a certain degree to Accretive. It's fun trying to find that balance, but because neither of them have taken off or raised VC or raised money yet, I can balance it. But I think long term we'll have to have a think about it. I'd say you're more likely to succeed if you're contributing to one project. I don't know what I'm gonna do,
Yeah.
like in a year's time where we'll be, but for now, it's exciting and it's like I'm enjoying trying to build both.
Yeah. Do you think of it as like having two irons in the fire, or do you think of it as like I'm doing one for this purpose and the other for that purpose?
Like I can see both succeeding. They both have traction. They both have their qualities. But yeah, it is like I don't know. I'm not
It's
sure what my
unclear.
answer to that question is.
I think it's really difficult to tell, especially early on, what direction things are going to go, because with really small companies, things can change overnight, and it will entirely change how you think about the business, or entirely change the long-term or short-term success of that business. I had a conversation a couple well, I guess a week ago here, and similar situation, early stage founder, two companies, a little bit enough traction to keep running both companies. But he had the very fortunate situation where one of their TikTok videos got like 10 million views in 4 days and added,
Wow.
30,000 a month in revenue in a few weeks time. So in that situation, it's like a very clear A and B of
Yeah.
like where you spend your time. But for like 99% of situations, it's very unclear.
Yeah. I obviously haven't been through that. That's awesome. That bit of traction. Yeah, until I hit that, I think the answer will be obvious if I was at that stage. But for
Yeah,
now,
exactly. You obviously have a pretty good perspective of how people think about competitive analysis. I mean, you're selling to business insights, selling to marketers who are looking at competitors. What do you think like most founders really get wrong about competitive analysis?
from what I've seen, based on our users and chatting to them, is that they'll do it early on in a project or not that often. It could be once a year, and they just don't put the time in to analyze the granular detail. That is obviously a problem because the business is adapting every. It's a much shorter period than a year. So, like for one example was that this company, it was a SaaS company, they had picked their pricing model based on their competitors, but that competitor had just raised a load of money and decreased their pricing models.
Right.
So that decrease was then leading to them not really making that much money, and they were VC backed. And then this other, my client or our user, had dropped their prices to nearly nothing, and that can't work long term. So they figured it out after a while. But a tool like Openly or them just doing it manually on a more regular basis would have fixed that and would have highlighted that insight really.
It's really obvious to do competitor insights when you're building a deck, um, and thinking about fundraising, because obviously investors, if they're investing in a particular space, they're looking at, you know, maybe 10 to 50 companies of kind of similar caliber. And really knowing your space well is a great sign to an investor. But at the same time, once you get out of that stage, I think a lot of people put it on the back burner because there's just so many fires to put out, even though it does make an impact in the day to day and the week to week type of work.
Yeah, 100%. It's something when you're in your week to week, if you're developing marketing, you just kind of don't want to put that time. It's really just admin. It feels like it's in the way nearly. Yeah,
Just like
even for
admin.
me, I'm building a competitor analysis tool, and I'll be using it openly to analyze them.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I think there's something to building a product that you can actually take advantage of as a business. One example that I often give of this is like if you can align your sales and your product, you have like a compounding chance of success. So if you're, for example, a content creation tool for Twitter and you can build a product that's really good at generating content creation, then you've also just started to solve your marketing moat, right? So I think it only makes sense for you to be, obviously using your own tool set to monitor your
Yeah, and I think
competitors.
that's something we're learning. Like in the last week or two, we've kind of learned our messaging on the website and all doesn't really highlight that enough. I don't know how we figure out sharing that sort of insight, but using that as our marketing, we're going to try and figure out how to do that, whether it's on Twitter or LinkedIn, just showing off that Openly is using Openly to do the competitor analysis. But it's quite a cool example if it works.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess like how do you think about like the competition in your space?
Yeah, I suppose a lot of them, there's a lot of massive companies, and one or two are public. So they're pulling in quite a lot of money and they're really expensive. It can't be a race to the bottom, but we are cheaper. And what we want to do, what they don't, is just build something super simple that you can check in once a month or whatever you want, and you spend 2 minutes on the site, get the information you need. Whereas if you go to some of my competitors, they're very specific as well. So you have to go in and you have to look through the more granular data, which is good for someone who likes data and likes getting insights from it. But we want to kind of pull that out and display it to our users. So we're actually integrating with some of our competitors to pull data from them. A lot of them do have APIs and you have to get access to them, but we're looking to pull all that data out. So we're actually collaborating and partnering with them. We just haven't launched that yet. It's quite a slow process and it's expensive enough, but it's quite a good ecosystem. A lot of tools work well with each other.
I think that makes sense when what you're talking about earlier is people think of it as like something they shouldn't spend time on. And if I go on to, let's say, Clearbit, for example, there's just so much information.
Yeah.
It's like I need a degree before I can figure out what's going on their dashboard type of thing. It makes sense for like large enterprise companies when you do have a team of data scientists, but for like a vast majority of small companies, they just don't have the bandwidth to be searching through layers and layers of data.
It's kind of a waste of time really when you don't need all that data. You need to figure out what that means to your business. How does that improve? How do you improve? And that's obviously what we're trying to do. Just make it really simple to do that.
It feels like it's not a waste of time because you're doing something, but yeah, I understand from the point of like spending time in a very meaningful way. You're going to spend 80% of your time doing things that just don't matter. And then 20% is what's going to move the needle
Yeah.
almost entirely. So yeah, I do understand that train of thought. So one of the tools I was looking at before we had a conversation here, I'm sure you're familiar, is called Latika. Get Latika. And the reason why I was looking at this tool, it's something I've used before. Basically, what it is it's competitive insights for SaaS founders. But how they work is it's basically a database of recordings, Zoom recordings or webinar recordings of like C-suite founders and other lead roles in startups talking about their company. And what they do is they transcribe all the data and then tell you what they think is actually going on in the internals of the company. My competitive side is like, this is a fantastic resource. But on the other side, it kind of makes me feel like weird that I'm basically aggregating a bunch of these people's like not one-on-one, but public information, but recorded, and being like, oh yeah, Jason from marketing said this is what they did in October, and then Steve from the other part of the company said this is what they did in November. It almost feels creepy, right? And so one of the things that I think about is like, does competitive intelligence go too far, and where does it go too far?
Yeah. I think like that is obviously a bit creepy. I'd say like there's a couple of tools I've used and it's insane the amount of data that they can gather and share and sell. Like there's sites that are displaying data on our company that's quite accurate on where we're getting our traffic, all that kind of thing. Like I don't know how they get their data, but I don't know how straightforward and ethical it probably is. But what we're going with for Openly is that if the data, it has to be accessible on the internet, whether it's deep down on a site in some random unindexed site, we're going to try and find it. So that's our challenge. We're trying to build like I suppose long term a crawler, but that's what Google do and they do it very well. I don't know if we'll have the skill set to build that even long term. Um, but yeah, that's where we want to go. That's the route we're going down. But then again, if I was working for a big corporate to get to make the business bigger, better, etc., you probably do need to resort to them tactics. no matter how unethical it is. I don't know if I would do it, but I can see why people are doing it. Yeah, so it's a fine balance, and if you can keep it a secret, I suppose that's just business.
Yeah. And I think that's often people end up in situations where they go down every other path and nothing seems to move the needle. And they're either in a role where, it's kind of their job to move the needle on the competitive intelligence. So it's an obvious, all right, so we've played out 95% of the white hat book. What's
Mhm.
in the gray hat book?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And obviously, like further down that line, getting into black hat is never something you want to do, never something that's generally good or positive. But if it happens behind closed doors and nobody talks about it, it generally gets swept under the rug.
I think the grey hat stuff you just want to keep a secret, but some of the black hat you can get in a fair bit of trouble for. So yeah,
Yeah, of course.
you definitely don't want to go there.
We should talk a little bit about capturing opportunities because you're working on two businesses. One, I think, is in a position to capture the opportunity of the rise in interest rates. The other is trying to capitalize on the opportunity of the access to LLMs. How do you think about like capturing opportunities?
I think there's probably two ways I've tried to capture an opportunity. It's number one is having the connections, the network, chatting to cool creative people who have their ear to the ground. So like 10 years ago they would have been into Bitcoin, and now a year ago someone was chatting about GPT, OpenAI, and just having them connections. Like I've never been able to find out information for myself. I don't know why I can't. I just don't have that skill set. But there's always been someone who'll come to me and tell me, or we'll just be chatting about it. So that's the first part. And then the second is just having the skills to be able to build on top of that information. So, well, Bitcoin's different because you just buy the thing, but maybe you need the skill set to understand how it works. But for OpenAI and the access to large language models, you want to have maybe full stack development skills so you can build a front end to one of these tools or build them yourself and fine tune. So that would have been a couple of years worth of practice and learning and just messing about. That's the connections, your network, and having the skills to really jump on a trend.
Yeah, I 100% agree on your second point there, which is like it's great if you can spot the opportunity, but if you can spot the opportunity and you don't effectively have the skill set to go
Yeah,
after it or don't have the capital to deploy towards it, it's a great way to start a media company,
yeah.
basically.
Yeah, you feel a bit left out. You have to capitalize somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Appreciate that. That makes sense. All right. So we're getting closer to the end here. Let's talk a little bit about AI. Why did you choose to go with the .ai domain? What does it actually mean for Openly?
I suppose it's what our brand is built on. Our tech is all AI, so it made sense to go with that. And then obviously the SEO. I'm not sure how things work, but I just presumed early on that AI would come in. If someone's searching for AI competitor analysis, we might appear a bit higher. I'm not sure if that is the case, but that was my thinking behind it. And then also, like, it signals innovation. So versus a .com, it could be a 20-year-old company or a new one. But .ai is a new thing. People know we're new. We're probably going to be different. We have some sort of USP versus the competitors who are all .coms. I'm just not sure about the future of it. Is it like overhyped?
Is
Should
it
we
a
have
Web
gone with that?
three?
Yeah, we'll find out in a year or two, or maybe a bit longer. But like .io still going, so we might be lucky.
That's interesting that you say about the long term. Do you think that we've actually peaked in the hype cycle? Like,
I
was
don't think so.
2023 the peak of it? No.
It's hard to know. I suppose with the crypto or Web3, all of that was built on like tech that it didn't really have a use case, or a lot of it didn't make sense what was being sold. Whereas AI does. I don't know if AI. I don't know. I think the hype cycle will last a bit longer, but long term in 10 years, we'll be talking about new technologies that won't be labeled as AI, but AI is behind the scenes. So through that, through a different means, we're still talking about AI. I think it's here to stay. It just might be a different scene or a different thing we're labeling it.
Yeah, well, I think basically what has happened with the internet, right? Like in the dot com bubble, people were calling it the highway, the information highway, and you know, if you put that on your marketing, it was probably a pretty good way to get traction at the time. If you put that in your marketing now, you know, the question you're going to get asked is, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Right?
Yeah,
It
we
just
throw
doesn't
back.
make sense. Yeah. So in 5, 10 years, what do you think is actually going to be the biggest impact from AI?
I suppose how information is created and shared. So any industry relating to content or information, it's just that's going to be way different. I'm not sure how much it'll affect the like medical or that side of things, but the more like the social medias are going to be different. Like I'm sure you've seen that influencer who's it was fake. It came out there a couple of weeks ago, stuff like that. Imagine what it's going to be like in 5, 10 years if we're only a year into this. It's going to be interesting to see where that goes and how regulation stifles it or slows it down, which mightn't be a bad thing. But yeah, it's exciting.
From my perspective, just looking back at the last 6 months and seeing the inbound we get for people wanting to list their companies on the site, and seeing people actually building out meaningful products. To me, I think most of the value, all of the value, I would say 99% of the value from large language models is still in the future. But I do feel like that we've hit the peak of market saturation with certain tools. In particular, one I think that has gotten tons of coverage, and frankly, we benefit from the coverage, is like image generation tools. I just don't think that the excitement about these tools actually plays out into a lot of markets compared to how data analysis will play out into the markets. The use case is not as valuable, in my opinion. Now that doesn't mean there's not going to be a bunch of people making a bunch of money on image generation tools. That's not something people should work on. I just don't think it's going to be the bottom part of the iceberg in the next 5 to 10 years of the impact of AI.
Just out of interest, where do you see it going?
I agree with what you said about we don't call it AI. Like we call it AI now, but 5 years ago, machine learning models were effectively the precursor to GPTs, which is, generative pre-trained transformer. So we call it AI now. In 10 years, I think it would be odd to call it AI. I'm not exactly sure. I think there's two ways this plays out. The first way is that we repeat the cycle of the internet, which is that a lot of things get siloed into very valuable products, and the moats of these companies are built on technology. That's largely how I think I would describe how the internet has played out in the last 20 years. The other way, which is a strong possibility, is that everything just it becomes a native DevOps layer to any software, and AI is no longer a feature. It's just what DevOps people do.
Yeah,
And I'm not exactly sure the direction. And there's obviously margin in between those two options. But I do believe that those are the extremes of both options, but both future possible options.
that's interesting about the DevOps. It's not something I've seen or thought of.
Yeah, I think, well, I'm trying to think of an example of a technology that's just become native to any type of well, like I guess like think about like OAuth. Obviously, it's a very simple thing. Get people to log into your website, or website app. Get people to log in with a social they already use. When companies like WorkOS started rolling out OAuth, it was new technology. Now Like name a website that you can't just go to and log into with your Google or
Yeah.
your Facebook or whatever. It's less of a feature. It's more just a necessity in your tech stack. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how this plays out. Anything I'm going to say is tribal hymns of speculation about
Yeah.
what I've seen, but
We could come up with some bold predictions and see where we can look back at this in 5 years. Be interesting to see what we said.
yeah, let's do that after this call. Let's come up
Yeah.
with some predictions and put them in a G drive or something. But before we hop off, I just want to wind back a couple of the questions we talked about early on. So you talked about living in the US. You talked about what you think this looks like 10 years from now. There's really one question that I'm curious about, which is why 20 million? This is something a question that I've asked myself, and I don't know what the answer is. I think I get a lot of drive, I guess, out of just like working on exciting things. I don't know what the number is for me. Why is it 20 million for you?
I think after I'd purchased a nice car, a nice house, and I was kind of set up for the rest of my days that I could be comfortable, the rest of that money I said would cover different various projects. And I would like to do something quite bold, quite out there, potentially deep tech, like the way Elon Musk sold his first company, made his money, and then went into other areas. And I think, quite famously said, like, if you're building something, double the money, double the time. So 10 million was enough, I thought, and then just doubled it. And that's kind of what I came up with. Because I did look, the few ideas I had, there was a bit of logic around the 10 million. A couple of the companies that are doing similar level of tech that I would potentially want to go to have raised certain amounts, whether it's between 2 and 4 million. I just added the 2 or 3 ideas up, and that got me to roughly 10, and then doubled it. So it's a real, it's kind of funny. I don't know.
Napkin math is good.
Yeah, it really is man math.
Yeah, I think there is a train of thought that I have, which is like after a while, you solve the financial issue, and you basically, like what you said, you have everything you need. Where more is not meaningful. It's like diminishing returns. So when you only have $100, another $100 is a massive difference.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have $100,000, $100 is significantly less of a difference. And I think and I'm not speaking as somebody who's actually experienced this. I think this is more just speculation as to what it feels like. But I think there's a point at which you need to start doing those more aggressive, deeper ventures, or else it just stops becoming interesting. And it's less related to money and more related to like why you actually wake up in the morning, what's actually like keeping your mind going. And I think I've never been a fan, and it sounds like you sit on the same page as people who raise a bunch of money, sell the company, and then check out for the rest of their life. That doesn't seem like fun to me, frankly.
No, it's not
Yeah,
really
it
a
doesn't sound
challenge
like.
after that. You want to satisfy, and you also want to, leave a legacy, I suppose. And I must ask, do you have a number? I know, or do you have something?
No, I don't think I have a number, to be honest. I think if right now I was $10 million richer than I am, I would probably still be doing the same thing. Obviously, my approach would be different
Yeah.
because, of your ability to deploy capital. But I think for the most part, I think I would probably approach businesses with more stability than I do now. I think I'm probably a bit like bird brain and more reactive to things that I should be less reactive about. I guess insecure about it, but for the most part, I think I would probably be doing the same thing that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I think similar to yourself, I'd probably be attempting to solve the same problems. Just how you go about it's a lot different when you don't have to bootstrap it. But then again, it makes it, if you can get it to work from the stage we're at, I think it would be a better business, or it'd just be more satisfying to work on.
And it becomes a bigger thing for yourself. Like you can get some pretty small in the perspective of like industries and markets, small but hugely meaningful outcomes if you bootstrap and own a huge chunk of the company for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, man. This has been a fantastic conversation. I would say, how do people find you? Where do you want people to go?
My email is david@openly.ai, and you can also reach out on LinkedIn and Twitter. Twitter I don't use as much, but I'm on there. So that's the three ways.
Fantastic. Yeah, cheers. This was a great conversation. I appreciate it so much.